Greetings from the set of Metro and More at Metropolitan Community College, serving more than 50,000 students with over 120 programs at our 8 locations in the daytime, evening, weekends, or online. Hi again, everybody. I'm Kent Pavelka for Metro and More, coming your way from the Institute for the Culinary Arts for this next 30 minutes here at the Fort Omaha campus. And this is our quarterly Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce update with the President and CEO of the Chamber, David G. Brown. Good to have you.
Okay.
We've got new digs here. We're taking the show on the road occasionally.
I like it. I like it.
This is a great facility.
It really is. And we take clients here all the time because it's another one of those unexpected things that we show them that they kind of shake their head and say, boy, Omaha is more than I ever thought it was. So it's a great facility.
You bet. Third quarter update.
Yep.
Always good to get the update. It's in the books. How'd it go in general?
Well, in general, it went well, minus one big blip that we'll talk about here later on. But I think if you look at in the scheme of things, the things that we had said we needed to get done in the third quarter, programmatically we did well, economic development-wise we did well, public policy-wise we did well. We got all of our programs done that we wanted to. So those things all happened. Of course, the elephant in the room is the ConAgra announcement, which is not something anybody would have programmed for nor wanted to have happen. But we'll talk about that a little more in detail as we come up here.
What was the primary goal in the third quarter, or do you look at it that way?
Yeah, well, our year is broken into quarters because we have certain events that happen at certain times of the year, and our economic development flow of projects tends to change too throughout the year. So this third quarter tends to be a pretty important quarter. It's a time we expect to get a good number of announcements from economic development clients, and we had a couple of great big events that would have driven that kind of activity too. So for us, the Make Happen event was a brand new event that we just did this past week or so. It's a replacement for the Buy the Big O show. So from a chamber perspective, it was a big shift for us from talking about how companies sell to each other to getting people ready to make a difference in this community. So totally different kind of event. It was very successful. 400 people showed up. We had some nationally renowned speakers and authors that were there. And so we think we'll do it again next year because it was such a success this year.
Any sadness over the Buy the Big O being history now?
Yeah, last year was its 25th year, and frankly, when we started the year, we really hadn't anticipated making this shift. It's just part of us. It's been a tradition for us for so long, but we just realized that the trends were headed in a direction that just didn't make sense for us to keep kind of pumping more and more and more work and energy into something that wasn't creating the kind of excitement and energy that we needed for the community and for the chamber. And honestly, we're about being a catalyst for change, and we need to look at ourselves pretty clearly and say, wasn't it time for us to make this change too? And it was. So difficult decision, a little bit of melancholy around it, of course, but I'll never forget Larry Gomez's voice on the loudspeaker talking about who won what prize. That's something that just sort of will stick with me for the rest of my career, I'm sure.
Yeah. Melancholy is probably the word, and about 25 years, that's a good run.
Yeah.
Well, as you said, the unexpected event in the third quarter was the announcement by ConAgra that a good part of their workforce and management team is going to relocate from Omaha to Chicago.
Right.
What happened?
Well, the company made a decision they were going to move, and we were really never given an opportunity to change their mind. So in a normal process like this, if there is such a thing, when a company is considering moving to another market, there's a lot of give and take. They identify what the challenges are in our community, they compare that against other communities they might be considering. They look at opportunities in those other communities and typically come back to their existing community and say, look, here's the stuff we're dealing with, either the incentives that they're offering other places, or more likely the tax structure in those communities. We can run our business more efficiently, more effectively there. And usually then you get an opportunity to engage and try and make the case that it's more competitive to stay in their existing community. In this circumstance, we didn't have that opportunity. We knocked on their door for months and months and months and months and months. I had one opportunity to be with the CEO at a reception that ConAgra had sponsored, and then one opportunity to meet with them. And then every offer we made after that, which we made regularly to provide them with information, get in front of them and try and pitch for this city, we were told there's no reason to do that. We're still in the middle of building a strategy. So The meeting between with the governor and the mayor, their individual meetings and phone calls with the CEO at the end of September were actually scheduled because we thought that their strategy process, from their words, was going to go through the end of October. And so we really pushed and shoved to get those contacts made so that we had about 30 days to be engaging them while they were kind of finalizing their plans. And then they decided the day after they had those contacts that they were going to make their move. So in the end, I kind of liken it, my son asked me this question the other day, well, why couldn't we get in to see him? And I kind of liken it to what we do at night when a telemarketer calls at 6:30 at night. We don't answer the phone. If a salesman knocks the door and we don't want to talk to him, we don't answer the door. And that's essentially what happened with ConAgra for the past really several months. We knocked on the door and we made the calls. They weren't interested in meeting. So they decided they were going to leave.
I guess my impression is the community thinks that this came out of nowhere, but you're talking about kind of knowing this was coming for months and months and months.
Well, for months they said that they were going through a strategic analysis to decide what they were going to do with jobs in Omaha. We knew that they had to shrink in size because they were, number one, they had to sell off the business that they had bought a few years ago, the private label business that wasn't working out. And they made it pretty clear that there was going to be some job cuts. And we were hoping that they weren't going to be here, and we were hoping that the headquarters was going to stay here, but we didn't have any inclination of what the outcome was going to be, just that there were going to be some cuts. So, we were running scenarios like everybody else. It could be virtually nothing, it could be something significant. We just didn't know. So we were trying to figure out what we could do to try and help them to stay.
So without that knowledge, how do you do it?
And so we were building plans in a vacuum to say, what happens if this, what do we do if this happens, or what do we do if this happens? And so it was all a matter of, can we get enough information to do something to keep the company here, or all the jobs here? And frankly, without their engagement, we couldn't do it.
How many jobs lost? How many folks are going to be here that aren't going to Chicago?
Well, what they've told us is that there's about 2,500 people in Omaha proper. That does not include the manufacturing jobs in Council Bluffs, which I think is around 700 or 800. And it doesn't include, I think, about 100 they have in manufacturing, a popcorn facility down by Lincoln. So 2,500 in this real close Omaha market. 300 of those are scheduled to move to Chicago. 1,200 of them are scheduled to stay in this market. And 1,000 existing jobs they're telling us are going to disappear.
So you've got two problems. 1,200 people, what'd you say, are losing their job? Are staying,
right.
And another 1,000?
Another 1,000 go away.
Who will be looking for jobs.
Right, and 300 that ostensibly would be moved to Chicago, but that assumes that those 300 actually want to move.
Right.
If some of them don't want to, you got to add those to the 1,000 of people that would be looking for work here.
So as a result, you guys had to scramble. What does the chamber do in this situation?
Right.
And you've come up with Our Talent Stays Here effort.
Yeah, we could have been very bitter about all this and just looked at every way why this was negative and we were never going to be able to get around it. But the reality is that with 2.5% unemployment here, to have 1,000 plus people who are skilled, have work histories, are really great people that love this community, to have them as a pool of people all of a sudden that companies could hire, that was a golden opportunity for us. So we've been hearing we've talked about this for the last 2 years, that our biggest challenge is workforce. Where are we going to find them? Now we can create some in the long term through Metro Community College and K through 12, and we can try and recruit people in certain occupations from outside. But this was an opportunity for us to say, geez, there's 1,000 plus people here. And at the same time, we know there's a couple of other companies that have said they're going to have smaller layoffs, and so you pool all them together, we have a need to find jobs for 1,400 or 1,500 people. So how are we going to do that? And so we decided that immediately we were going to take the positive tack here and say this is about keeping that talent, the greatest resource in this market, So we started working on Thursday morning after we heard the announcement. We were actually in DC at the time at one of our trips there, and just started working the strategy. And by the time I got back to the office on Friday morning, there were a dozen people standing outside my office saying, here's what we want to do. And the strategy was remarkable. It started with a meeting less than 24 hours after the announcement with 12 local companies who said that they were looking for ways to access that labor pool with ConAgra. They immediately identified 650 jobs that just within their companies would meet the kind of individuals that were looking for work as a result of the ConAgra layoffs. And even then we didn't know too much about the split. We just knew that they were going to be experienced people. By the next day, our website had been revamped to be focused on helping companies access that workforce and have those individuals who are looking for work access and give us their information so the companies could get information about them. And then by Sunday, there was a full-page ad in the paper that says, "Our talent stays here. You're a great resource. We need you to stay here. We want you to stay here. Here's some resources we're putting in place to make it easier for you to transition from ConAgra and other employers to staying here and working here in this market."
Talk a little more about the website. Access through the regular website?
Yeah, you access it through RedoandCoast.com/jobs.
Okay.
And if you go there, there's places where if you're a company looking to access these people, you can fill out the information and we'll contact you about the processes we're putting in place to get people access to employees. And if you're an employee and you want to confidentially provide information so employers can see your information, there's a way to do that on the website too.
Great. So what's the next step? Are you going to try to track
Oh yeah,
how this has all come together?
yeah. That was just the beginning. So far, I remember that happened a week ago. All this came about. 135 companies have come forward and said we have jobs available, and there's 2,700 jobs have been identified already for this group of people.
For 1,500
For
people.
1,500 people. 2,700. Now these are IT jobs, they're sales jobs, they're customer service jobs, they're marketing jobs, because those are the kind of jobs that probably are going to be let go at ConAgra and other companies here. And the companies are just saying, we want to engage now, we want to keep these people here. So in less than a week, we've been able to garner so much support from the community that the company's HR folks are working with us now to make sure that they're connecting us up with all the information we need to make it easier for their employees. Over the next month or so, we're going to have job fairs. We're going to have targeted job fairs for certain types of employees within certain types of companies. If you're a finance person at ConAgra or another company that might be letting people go, we'll have an opportunity for people who are looking for finance people to come and talk to you. The same for IT, the same for marketing, the same for sales and customer service. So we're engaged in that process and will be over the next several weeks. And then finally, of course, they got a big piece of ground downtown. And so we're just starting the conversation with them now with the city and us, about how we manage that whole process of engaging the company in what's going to be available and how do we access it and make it as good for Omaha as we can.
This is, in a way, has the potential of being a good thing, with the exception of the displacement factor for the employees at ConAgra. Right. I mean, by having an answer to employers who've been looking for people.
Right. Like I was saying earlier, I think if there is such a good thing, if there is such a thing as a good time for something like this to happen, it's when your unemployment is so low that everybody's looking for somebody to work. You're looking for people with experience and skill sets and work ethic and all that kind of good stuff, and these people fit that model really well. It's not a good thing for the community long term not to have a good corporate headquarters here. You lose the philanthropy that company typically puts in. You lose the jobs and the benefits and those kind of things that they put in. So we're still dealing with those issues, and all the folks that were dependent upon ConAgra for their largesse, for everything from food to supporting us or United Way or whoever it might be. All of us are going to have to go through some adjustment based on the fact they're not going to be here forever. But in the short term, we thought the best target was to start making sure these people stay here. And we utilize our resources that way.
What's your guess as to what happens with the campus?
I don't really have one right now. I would say that it is not going to become a clear piece of ground. I can pretty much be certain of that. That makes no sense to take existing office space in a beautiful environment and not make that available for companies who might be looking for that kind of space. But there is ground there. There is ground right on 10th Street. There's ground in between the office buildings that could be redeveloped in different ways to make that campus kind of more a part of the old market. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine long term that's kind of how it ends up being. But these are decisions that ultimately take longer to get done than even the job ones do.
Yeah, and that potentially could be kind of an eyesore for a while once it's vacated.
The thing is, I don't think remember, 1,200 people are staying on this campus. So they have 5 or 6 buildings there. They're probably going to need at least 3 of those buildings long term, I would imagine. So there's still going to be people coming and going on that campus all the time. They're still going to be cutting the grass and keeping the trees up and putting the flagpoles up every day and all those kind of things. And then that leaves other buildings available for other companies to go into. And so from a economic development perspective, I got limited vacancy downtown. I'm going to have more space I can put companies in downtown. I've got ground available now for redevelopment in the downtown area, so if the city and the development community can engage in a way to make this really exciting, it could be a really exciting next chapter for the old market expansion.
No way to know bottom line economic impact.
No, not really. I hope, what I'm hoping is we'll sit here a year from now and I'll be looking at these year over year job numbers, and we won't even have seen a blip. That we'll be able to absorb these people in, and that from a job perspective at least, we've been able to count this as a positive rather than a negative. There's other things, as I mentioned, that'll impact the community, but in this particular case, we think that we've got a golden opportunity to mitigate the challenges that come from employment in this one.
So how's this impacted the chamber in terms of carrying on with what you had planned to focus on?
We are able to be really nimble in situations like this, but honestly, our talent initiative was all about how do we find people and attract them here. And so
and we'd been talking about, well, how do we keep our youth here? Well,
that's right.
Who cares about demographics if we can answer the problem for
we got to answer the bell right now. We're talking about our best and brightest. Guess what? 1,000 of them plus are in companies that are currently working here that we want to have stay here. So all it does is it kind of refined our focus and say, now we know what the target is for the next several months. Let's keep as many of these people as we can. The rest of our agenda continues. We keep having economic development successes. We've blown through our goal for this year. Our goal is $600 million in capital investment. We're already about $660 million, I think, right around there. Our job numbers for the year, our goal is 2,500. We're well over 3,000 already in terms of new jobs. 21 startups worth $16 million in investments. So that blows past what our goal was for the year for entrepreneurship. So all the rest of the stuff that we're doing just great. Membership is continuing to grow, and so all those things continue on the way we want them to. This just gave us another way to really narrow our focus on the talent initiative enough that will impact all the rest of our agendas too.
What's in the project pipeline?
We've opened 59 files this month alone. A good number of those are existing company expansions, but there's also a number of them that are startup companies that we're working with. Even at our Make Happen event, we had a large number of startups that were there. These are companies that not only are startups, but they're also companies that have customers, people that are actually paying them for their services. So we drew a line in the sand to say, we're really going to focus on those 35 or so startups that have revenue coming in rather than just investment coming in. And it's exciting to see the growth in that market. We're seeing a lot of companies taking off, and we're going to see more and more over time. So 59 new clients in the quarter, hundreds of them throughout the first year to date. So I'm looking forward to next quarter's report when we can say, boy, we've had a really great 2015 looking into 16.
What are you seeing in terms of momentum? I mean, a lot of the things you just talked about could be classified as momentum, but besides, notwithstanding the ConAgra thing, what kinds of things are you seeing momentum-wise in this community?
Well, if you just think about doing a 360 kind of view around maybe the 40th floor of the First National Tower, let's say, and you start looking east, west, north, and south, and you kind of wander around that building, you see all the growth on the ConAgra campus. You see the Kiewit construction, or Kiewit's new training facility in Nodo. You see Lot B that's currently under consideration for redevelopment. If you go to the west, you see all the new apartments and condos and the UNMC stuff that's under construction, and even the stuff at Exarban Village and UNO with the new campus or the new arena. If you go south, you see all the stuff that's going along 10th Street, with KETV's renovation of the Burlington and the new Blue Barn Theater and the new open market that's going in over there. And then you look down by the CenturyLink Center and you realize we got a new Marriott, the new apartment buildings, and HDR headquarters. If that's not momentum, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing amount of development that's happening in this community, and all of those things I described are things that are going to continue on for the next several years to kind of they're the underlying foundation upon the rest of the growth that we'll be able to bring to bear. It's really an exciting time to be here.
Yeah. What's the latest on the Crossroads situation?
There's still a big negotiation going on between the city and the developer, trying to make that deal work. The city has some limitations on what it is willing to do and can do, and the developer is pushing the envelope as much as they can. They're considering some state legislation, if they can, to make that deal work better, but they still got a little bit of work to do to get that deal put together.
Yeah, and when that gets resolved, that's really going to make a big difference.
It should.
From Midtown West.
Well, it's a big site, and it's a obvious site that people drive by every day by the thousands, and they want to see something good there. It's just also a very complicated project with ownerships and leases and the types of projects you want to put in there and the type of buildings that you want to put in there. It's not cheap, and so they got to figure out a way to make that cash flow, and it'll get there, but it's just still a very complicated project.
Any feel for when that might kind of get all settled?
Well, I have a feeling that they're going to be going to the legislature for some legislation this next session, and so I'm hoping that they can get a deal done between now and the end of the year, contingent upon legislation passing, and then hopefully getting that legislation passed. But I think that's still up in the air too.
Things relatively quiet on the local political level, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the occasional issue that pops up, but you kind of expect that. I mean, that's in a growing community, you're going to see things come up every now and then. I mean, our REACH program, which is designed to help the city and the school district and Metro and the Med Center access small and emerging businesses more readily and building their buildings and providing subcontracts to them, continues to wind its way through the approval processes. So within this next quarter, I'm sure there'll be some debate at both the city council and the school board level about the best way to provide the services that we're talking to provide. So that'll get political, but that's to be expected when something new kind of comes out of the pike. But other than that, I think we've got a great relationship with the city and with the mayor. They seem to be focused on the same things, and we'll engage with the school board as much as we need to keep improving quality education. And I think in the end, we're going to see unbelievable projects that are being built by all of those organizations and getting as many companies locally involved in building those things as we possibly can.
Obviously, your focus is always on the greater Omaha area and the economic situation here. But do you step back often and look at the macro view and how that might affect like the national politics, national economics, and how that's might eventually affect Omaha?
Yeah, and actually we're seeing something interesting right now. You think about during the recession, all of our companies, for the most part, particularly the larger ones, were in a growth mode. So agriculture, transportation, all of those were growing because the markets that they were in needed their work continually. Now we're in a situation where transportation is down, ag is down, and those are things that are drawing some of our existing companies' earnings downward. And so we're having different pressures in this market than we've had over the last several years because they're not just knocking it out of the park with record earnings every year. So the national oil and fuel controversy is hitting us. Low oil prices keep the folks in North Dakota from pumping oil out of the ground, and so that impacts, say, Union Pacific and the trains that they run up there. It affects, ethanol is affected by low corn prices and lower amount of fuel usage. So you just start thinking about all the different national, international impacts. We are not immune to them, and we're starting to see some of those impacts now that we didn't see a few years ago.
Yeah, ConAgra might be part of that whole macro deal.
It may well be. We've got great companies that are doing really well, and we got other companies that aren't, and that's the beauty of our economy is that it is very diverse. So when some aren't doing well, some are. If we didn't have that counterbalancing, our unemployment wouldn't be at 2.5%, and we wouldn't be able to attract all these new companies to town. And so it's nice that it's a diverse economy, but that doesn't mean that we're not being impacted in some way by national and international events.
Yeah, and national politics, and of course, you look ahead to a year from now and a big election.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. I hate presidential election years because there's always a negative effect on growth. It just gets so negative. Everybody's yammering at each other. They're identifying what's wrong with this country, and everybody sort of gets emotional about it, and they stop spending, and the economy, which is driven by consumerism in this country, just slows down. And it's not until the election's over that people start perking up again. So
that happens without exception.
Without exception,
yeah.
It just happens, and it drives me crazy. There's nothing we can do about it. You can't change how people feel when all they're hearing and seeing is negative.
Yeah.
There's a natural inclination to respond to that.
Well, here's something that isn't negative. I want to congratulate you and the chamber, and kudos to you for the awards you got that were detailed in the Herald recently.
That's right. That was this quarter, wasn't it? Yeah, the chamber was blessed with the Chamber of the Year award nationally, actually for North America, at our the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives Convention in Montreal, and very proud of that. So there's 7,000 chambers in the country, and they break them into 5 different sizes, and we were able to get the large Chamber of the Year, which is just terrific. Our team worked hard for it, and our volunteers and our members deserve it for all the work that they do and what they do in the community, so it was terrific.
I bet you're proud.
Very much so. The application itself was a major undertaking, but when you saw what was in it, even if we didn't win, it kind of makes you bust your buttons with pride because of the things that we get done in this community. So I'm very proud of the team.
What's been the secret to the Chamber's success under your leadership with regard to this acknowledgement of?
It's people. It's both volunteers and staff. It's a staff that is passionately committed to making this a better place and doing their jobs. It's a volunteer group that just will not take no for an answer. We're going to get great things done in this community, and they're going to provide both the elbow grease and the funds to do really spectacular things here. And ultimately, it's that long-term environment that's been created here. We could be the best organization in the world, but have a lousy product, and we're not going to go anywhere. We're not going to get awards for making a lousy product look pretty but not achieve really good macro results. So you got to have a community that is moving in the right direction, or that you can move in the right direction.
And of course, you're always looking at your organization in terms of where you need to tweak things. Any changes imminent within the Chamber organization?
We have created a structure where we can be very nimble. So in doing that, we've gone from a very broad organization with, I think, some silos in place to a much narrower hierarchy that eliminated all those silos. So it means that we can function a lot better across different disciplines than we were ever able to do before. And we've created a culture of engagement. So our folks that work for us expect to be involved in everything that we do. And we ask for their opinions, irrespective of the division they're in. If something's coming in, they got expertise, we want to hear about it. So it's a very engaged workforce that cares about each other and cares about this community. Very goal-oriented. They want to accomplish great things, and we work hard, we play hard, but we're very, very proud of this community. We want to make it an even better place. So I think it comes down to culture, it comes down to support, and it comes down to commitment.
Maybe a final comment about ConAgra, the big news, and how the community is going to react to it.
Yeah.
You talked about attitude and looking at yourself negatively. What do you think?
Well, in the end, we have to remember that ConAgra has had a long history here. Okay, now I'm obviously disappointed that they moved their headquarters out of Omaha. But over the years, they've been 30 years in this location, and they've invested untold millions of dollars in payroll, in philanthropy, and capital investment, and those kinds of things in this market. And we've got to be thankful for that. Now, we don't have to be thankful that they decide to leave, but we do have to realize that all the work that it took to get them here, the incentives that were created, the site that was developed, it was well worth all the investment that was made to have a 30-year run on that site, and with all the impact that they ended up having on the downtown area and our community. Now we're going to turn the page. And there's another chapter of ConAgra. They're not going to be the biggest company in town. They'll be still a top 40 company probably. They're not going to be as visible, but we've got the ability to grow our own new visible big companies, and we're going to do just that. So sorry they're gone, but they're not really gone. They still got 1,200 people here, and we got to support those employees. But in the end, we got to keep growing this economy, whether ConAgra is going to be here as a headquarters or not.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it very much. From the Institute for the Culinary Arts at the Fort Omaha campus, that's Metro and More, our quarterly update with the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce and David Brown. For Metropolitan Community College, I'm Kent Pavelka. If you have comments or questions about the program, please email us at metrovision@mccneb.edu. Thanks for watching.